Thank you, everyone, for coming out today. Let's get started. So, I'm Corey Janssen. I'm the content designer at MetaMask, and I have over a decade of experience in content design and UX writing. And as we all know, the world of web3, it's rapidly evolving, and with that comes new challenges and opportunities for UX. So I'm really thrilled to have the chance to speak with everyone here today about how content design has the potential to make or break the future for Web3. But before we get started, let's quickly define content design because it's a pretty new field. Basically, content in terms of UX design, it's the language that appears within the user interface. So content design, which is sometimes called UX writing or product writing, is essentially designing with words. I've worked as a content designer at a lot of places in Web2, like Pinterest, Facebook, and Chase, and I gained a lot of valuable experience in the field. Digging deep into research and data to find the right language that best resonates with users. But it was the draw of the unknown and the new innovations of Web3 that drew me to MetaMask, where I've been able to immerse myself in the unique challenges of our emerging field. And as one of the very few content designers in Web3, I've been able to see firsthand the many challenges that this ecosystem presents. There's a lot of opportunity for us to cut through the jargon and create products that make Web3 accessible to everyone, not just developers and crypto enthusiasts, investors. And I'm really excited to share some insights with you guys today and hope that by the end of these next 15-ish minutes, you'll see the potential that content design holds for the next phase of Web3. So let's just dive right in. Content design is all about simplifying complex ideas so that they're easy for the average person to understand. And when it comes to Web3, there's definitely a lot of complex terminology to navigate. Luckily, we can apply some of the lessons and best practices from UX in Web 2 to make Web 3 more accessible and user-friendly. Because after all, the potential that we have for the democratization of money and power is lost if we can't effectively communicate with the people who we need to use it the most. So for the next few minutes, let's explore the challenges of communicating effectively in Web 3 and a few strategies that you can apply to your own projects for making everything more comprehensible and approachable for a wider audience. As Web3 continues to gain momentum, we're seeing more and more people become curious about it, and they're really excited, they're ready to jump in and explore. But one of the biggest barriers to entry for these people is the unfamiliar terminology that's associated with Web3. In fact, we've had many conversations with folks who've expressed feelings of intimidation and confusion when they see words like gas fees or seed phrase, smart contract, things that a lot of us here are really familiar with, so we forget how confusing these words can be to someone new. And then if someone is actually brave enough to take that chance on a dApp or a wallet or buying an NFT, they still will continue to struggle with the UX as they onboard. And this can really affect a user's ability to navigate the interfaces and complete tasks. I actually observed a recent research session where there were some intermediate to advanced level users who were still struggling to define what they were doing within a flow, even though they had literally just done that on screen. And that's not any fault of their own. That's just the fact that we need to reframe some of our terminology. And it was a bit alarming because when you consider the fact that a lot of these actions the users are taking are irreversible, they should be able to understand what they're doing when they're doing it. I like to think of this as being similar to when you're learning a new language, where it's not just a matter of memorizing vocabulary, but also comprehending the context and the structure of the language. There's a concept in language learning theory called comprehensible input that suggests that learners need to understand a certain amount of language before they can start producing it on their own. I'm a student of Mandarin. I've been taking it for a year, and I can sit around and memorize characters and practice my tones all day long, but it's not going to mean anything if I can't actually understand the words in the context of a conversation or reading a street sign. And in that same way, Web3 users need to comprehend a certain number of terms and concepts before they can effectively use them in our ecosystem. And nowhere is this need for comprehension more evident than in the prevalence of scams. Preventing fraud is crucial in the world of crypto, and it's more apparent than ever that comprehension and clarity are really necessary to achieve this. We all know that scams can take so many forms, like rug pulls, phishing attacks, and even experienced users can be tricked into giving away private keys or sending money to a fraudulent address. But there is some silver lining, because we might be able to combat some of these scams with better content design. By creating clear and user-friendly interfaces and using informative and concise text, we can empower people to make better decisions about their data. For example, a well-designed wallet interface could help users verify the authenticity of an address before they send funds, where an informative pop-up alert could warn users about a potential for scams or suspicious activity. But for Web3 to reach its full potential, widespread adoption really is necessary. But this is unlikely to happen if we don't understand how to use the things that we're building. While some people might argue that Web3 is still a bit niche, so it doesn't require the kind of widespread adoption I'm talking about today, I believe that we risk losing the world-changing potential that everything we're working on offers if it remains isolated from the broader sphere for much longer. And without a more cohesive effort to make Web3 more accessible, I believe it'll continue to be seen as just a place for thrill seekers and developers and crypto bros, with its complex jargon and notorious scams deterring many people who could really benefit from using our technology. So to avoid becoming just another tech bubble that burst, we need to meet people where they are and help them understand the value and the potential of Web3. I mean, in the world of tech, we're constantly iterating on our products and ideas, but why shouldn't that include improvements to the language we're using within our products as well? And just like in learning a new language, it's important for us to provide comprehensible input and support users at all levels. And in that same way, we need to provide accessible resources and user-friendly interfaces that help people navigate Web3 and understand its benefits. And by doing so, we can realize the full potential of Web3 and really make it a positive tool for change in this world. So, I mean, what can we do about this, right? Like, great, Corey, but how is that realistic? So, in the context of Web3, content design can play a crucial role in creating a user-centered ecosystem that attracts and retains a diverse and engaged user base. By using language as a tool for clarity and empathy, inclusivity, content design can help build the bridges and the pathways that will connect Web3 to the wider world of digital innovation and creativity. So let's just take a quick look at 4 key ways we can start doing this today. For starters, we should aim to be straightforward in all of our content and UX. Many newcomers, as I mentioned earlier, struggle to understand the technical jargon and the abstract concepts that underpin the blockchain. So we should aim to use plain language, analogies, and even visual aids to explain these concepts in a more accessible and relatable way. A couple good examples of something we do at MetaMask is renaming potentially confusing terms like token allowances and seed phrases to things that are a bit more intuitive to a user, like spending caps or secret recovery phrases. It's also worth considering whether we should rethink terms that are generally misunderstood, like gas fees. But at the end of the day, there's a human on the other end of the screen, so we need to write like a human as well. Another key factor is to build credibility and trust. Trust is essential in Web3, where users are often required to share their personal data in a decentralized and anonymous environment. So we can work together to build trust and credibility by using transparent and honest language and being super clear when we're writing about security and privacy, and avoiding using terms that sort of fall into hype or over-promises. One example of this approach is a new feature that we've started rolling out recently in some versions of MetaMask that creates a constructive hurdle when a user wants to reveal their secret recovery phrase. To unveil the phrase, the user has to pass a 2-question quiz that emphasizes the importance of never sharing your phrase with anyone, because realistically, if someone is asking you for your secret recovery phrase, it's pretty much guaranteed that they're going to steal your money, right? But unless we educate users about this, there's a big chance, actually, not no chance, that they'll fall victim to a bad actor, and then they'll lose trust in crypto altogether. And so our goal is to educate users through honesty and transparency, which then builds credibility, not just for MetaMask, but for the ecosystem as a whole. And the third key to improving UX in Web3 is to keep your content and your interfaces short and simple. Clear and concise language in UI text, error messages, and onboarding screens helps users understand what they need to know and how to do it. This can reduce frustration, errors, and confusion, and it increases the likelihood that users will stay engaged throughout the flows. There's a lot of research out there, actually, that suggests that people really only tend to read a very small percentage of text on any given screen. There was a study that was done by Nielsen Norman Group not too long ago that found users read about 28% of the text on a web page, whereas if you're on a mobile screen, it's only 20% of the text that a user's reading on any given page. So that really puts space at a premium and makes it very important to get to the point as quickly as possible. And finally, we should be accessible in everything that we're building. When you design for accessibility, you make an experience better for everyone. And above all, Web3 aims to be open, decentralized, and inclusive. But this requires us to be mindful of the diverse needs and the perspectives of people who will be using our products. We can foster more inclusivity and accessibility by using clearer language and considering the readability of the content for users with different backgrounds, abilities, preferences, and assistive technologies. And this can be as simple as using action-oriented language and providing clear steps for users to follow in our UI. Make sure that if you identify any errors or issues, that you offer guidance on how they can actually resolve these problems. That's just one step to make things easier for everyone. I could go on about this for hours, but I won't right now. And at this point, you might be thinking, okay, wow, Corey, that's great, but I don't have the budget for a content designer or a UX writer, and I know nothing about writing. But that's okay, because there are actually a few basics that you can easily apply to your own writing starting right now. So to begin with, prioritize empathy above everything. When you're considering how a user might feel at each stage of your flow, think beyond just what they're doing at that moment and focus on why they're doing it. If you can understand the user's goals and motivations, this can help you create a more effective and user-friendly experience via copy. Additionally, you might consider doing some user testing or just gathering feedback from a selection of people who you just test your content out on to help ensure that the user's needs and concerns are being addressed. But realistically, you're probably in a time crunch and you don't have the bandwidth or the budget to test your copy, right? So just a little hack that I like to use is try reading everything out loud, because this will help you identify awkward phrasing or unclear messaging. Then just keep rewriting until you find the sweet spot. And along those same lines, it's key to keep your copy short and simple, as I mentioned a moment ago. Be sure to use plain language and avoid unnecessary technical jargon, which can be difficult in Web3, but I think it's a realistic goal that we can all start working towards. Try to use the active voice whenever possible, and avoid long or complex sentences, because that can be cognitive overload for most people. Another basic practice is considering global audiences when you're writing. It's really easy to write in a silo and lose track of the fact that people might not be familiar with the idioms or slang that you might be tempted to use in some of your writing. Additionally, if this is a larger scale project, you should consider translations or localization support for users who might not be fluent in the primary language of your app. It's also really worth Googling terms or phrases that you might use in your product, especially if you're going to name a new feature, to make sure that it doesn't have an unsavory meaning in another language. This is something I've seen happen a lot. And finally, This sounds like a big goal, but it's very doable. Try to anticipate everything that can go wrong for a user. Sometimes it's called the unhappy path in UX. When you're creating error messages, provide detailed information about the problem and offer solutions and next steps. Just avoid generic error messages, 404s, codes, because they don't provide enough information to a user, and no one can understand how to fix the problem, and just creates a very cyclically frustrating experience for everyone. And if you have additional resources or support channels, provide a link to this in your error messages so people can get help when they need it. And I realized that was a lot of information in a very short time, and it's been a very busy weekend and very chaotic. So I've created a website that has all of the basics you need to get started with your own UX writing or content design. If you scan this QR code or just go to this URL, yeah, you can check out some style guides that I've created. I'm going to keep updating it as language evolves within Web3. And yeah, I would love to hear from you. And if you'd like to continue talking about content design and the future of Web3, feel free to hit me up via email, check out this website, find me on social media. Yeah, and just thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to this talk today. And I really can't wait to see what everyone does with content design to change Web3 for the better. Thank you, everyone.